Hello fellow AGDXers and welcome to another video, and today we're going to be looking at how to move graphics from one copy of AGD into another. So if you've got some sprites in one game and you want to use them in another, or if you want to just build up a little archive of sprites which you can then also share with people, you can do that. And there are several different ways of doing this, and I'm going to go through them one by one. Each of them has different advantages and disadvantages. So we'll start out here. We're in Andy Jones's game, Nixie, here, and there are a whole load of different sprites. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how to basically just export one single frame and move it over into another game. So we'll use this one here, and what we should be looking at here is the address, which you can see here, 37482. And when we're going to move a single frame, we only have to worry about the 32 bytes of image data right there. So what we'll do is we'll go into here. This is using Fuse, but you can also use Spectaculator using export machine code. But here we'll just give the sprite a name, and we'll save it off, and we'll use the address here, 37482, and in this case it's just 32 bytes of image data because it's a single frame. If I now move over to an empty version of AGD here, then all I need to do, I'll just adjust this. Here we go. As you can see, it's empty. I'll go to load binary data. I need to switch on supported files here, and you'll see the file there. And here I would put the address in and just enter the data. So whoops, just pressed the wrong button, excuse me for a second. Let me just reopen that again just to show you one more time. So we need to take note of the address there, 36946, load binary data, choose the one that you want and put the address in here, 36946, for the address that you want to load that frame into. Just like that, and then you just press M, which is copy, and that also serves as a refresh, so it refreshes the image, and there you can see that we've easily transferred that one over from our original game into our new game. So that's how you do that. There is, however, a more flexible way of moving single frames, and that's to save a screenshot from the sprite sheet. So what you do is press S in the sprite menu to go to the worksheet, press S again, and it will load all sprites and all objects into a screenshot. Now the best thing to do here is move the cursor down off the images so that the flash, when it's saved, obviously there's a flashing cursor that will be saved. You don't want that flashing over one of the sprites, so just move it down to the bottom out of the way. You then go to save screenshot, and although you can save it as SCR, it is basically a binary, so you could save it as SCR perhaps if you want to load it into ZX Paintbrush, for example, but and edit it and then save it out. But here I'm going to just save it as a binary because we're going to load this directly into our other game. Okay, so what I've done now, then I've saved a screenshot of all the sprites using the sprite sheet. If I now switch over to the empty game, as you can see here, it's only got that one single sprite in the sprite sheet, and when the worksheet is open, we then choose load binary data, load the set. We then here load at 49152, and this is because it's in upper memory, it's in one of the banks. And then we press R, and that will load from the memory, refresh the memory, and now you've got a worksheet with all of those sprites. And all you have to do then is highlight a sprite or an image and press M to copy, and I'll just clear this one, and then I'll press paste, and as you can see I can get an image. And of course, as most of you will know, you can use this to load any screenshot from any game and grab an image and copy and paste it, so it's quite flexible in that sense. So here you've got a set of all the different sprites, and if you want a single frame, that's another way of doing it, which is probably more flexible. Okay, so that's dealt with single images. But of course, what about if we want to save off a sprite as a set of frames? Well, again, it's pretty straightforward. Let's use this one as an example. So we can count the number of frames here. And as you can see, there's a total of 6 frames from 0 to 5. So we need to calculate the size of this image, and of course we need to take into account the fact that there is shifted data for the sprite to move and be animated. So what we do is calculate 6 times 128 to get the total size, which is 768 bytes. So all we have to do now then is save from the address there. We'll set it at frame 0, so we know we're at the start, and we'll create a new binary here, and we'll call it I suppose I think we'll just call it mix1frames.bin. There we go, and we'll now save that off, 37482, and of course we should remember the size, which was, just bring that in, I think, there you go, 768. Okay, so that's saved off those 6 frames. If we now bring over our fresh version, we can load it in at the start address, but before we do that, of course, we have to create the correct number of frames. So I've created here 5 frames for this image, and then I've got the address that I want to load it in at, and oops, it's not that one, is it? It's the other one. So again, just it's a good idea to have names that you can easily remember and reference, so you know what they are. Even include the number of frames and so on if you want to. But if I load that in there, there we go, and I press M again as before, and as you can see, nice and straightforward, we've got the animated sprite imported. So that's also quite easy. Now moving on, what about if we wanted to import the entire set of sprites from one game into another? The reason that you might want to do this, of course, is if you've got some corruption in your game, or there's a problem, you want to do a restart, you want to rewrite something, or you just want to use the same set for a new game. Well, basically, as you can see, the numbers here, 13, 62, 13 is the number of sprites, 62 is the number of frames, 36944 is the address, and 770 is the size of the whole data. And as you can see here in our old version, we've only got 1 sprite, and we've only got 6 frames. So what we'll have to do is save off the data, and then create a set of sprites which match the same number of frames and the same number of sprites. So all we need to do is check back to see the number that we have in the original game, and then create the correct number of sprites and frames so that we have the same numbers written here as we do here. Currently they're different. So first of all, let's save off the data. We can see here we've got 13 sprites, 62 frames, 36944, and a total memory size of around 7.5K. So let's save off the sprite set here as a binary, and we'll use the numbers here, 36944, 7962, and save it off, and that's our binary saved off and ready to be loaded in. Now if we go back to the new fresh one, you can see that I've created the correct number of sprites and frames. The frame and sprite ratio doesn't need to matter. One sprite could have 20 frames, another 10. As long as you've got 13 sprites and 62 frames, then the numbers all match up, and you can load in at 36944 here, and 7962, and you should find then that once that data loads, then it loads the frame data and the sprite data, and there you go, you've got all of the sprites loaded in the correct position. So this is a fine method, it works perfectly well. But it is a little bit fiddly simply because of the fact that you have to create all the sprites and the frames. It was then at this point that I realized that we could make use of the sprite compression system that is used when you're editing scripts. That actually stores the sprites in a compressed form while you edit scripts to save memory, so that you've got room. And so I thought we could actually apply this to the main menu and give you an option to save the sprites off in a compressed form that could then easily be restored, including all of the frame data. So in order to calculate the compressed size of the sprites, we need to basically take the number here, 62, multiply it by 32, which gives us the compressed size of the data. We then need to add this number here, 13, twice, so that'd be 26, and that's the frame data for the sprites. And the total then will be 2010. Now, what I neglected to do when making this video was to mention there should be an additional 2 bytes that you have to add, so it should actually be 2012. Now, to access this menu, Import Export, you press Ctrl S, and this will allow you to save or load compressed sprite data, and it will then convert it into fully uncompressed. So in this case, we've pressed Ctrl S, and we are going to save the data off. So we give it a name here, next set compressed, and we save it at 49152, and the total here, although on the screen here you'll see 2010, in this case you should add an extra 2 bytes to take into account the header, which tells AGD the number of frames and the number of sprites. So remember to add that as well. The other thing that you should remember is that this will crash the game sometimes if you're very short of memory. It's not a major problem. Save your game before you do it if you're worried. But it's not a major problem simply because the data will be saved correctly, and we're just exporting, so it's not a catastrophic error in any way. We've got the data, and we should be able to load it in here quite happily by pressing Ctrl S again. This time we choose Load Binary Data, and again switch on Supported Files, and load the compressed data here in at 49152. And when you press a key, it will uncompress the sprites, read the correct number of frames, and as you can see here, 13, 62, 36944, the whole thing is done completely for you. You don't have to create the frames, you don't have to create the sprites. You literally just press Ctrl S and load the compressed data. So that's probably the easiest and simplest method, apart from the one downside of the fact that it can crash the game sometimes. But it's survivable. You save the game and you don't worry about it. It just happens when memory is low. Okay, so those are all the methods really for importing sprite data that are available in AGDX, and they all have their uses in different ways. I will make another video about how to import blocks, and we'll come to that perhaps in the next one. In the meantime, as always, happy coding. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.